That makes sense. So you wear a lot of hats, I'd say, across all the different brands and the many different retailers. I'm especially curious because I know that in the CPG industry, the reaction to everything that happened last year was a little bit different than some of the other industries. So to kick things off, would love to hear, kind of how your business has adapted to kind of changing consumer needs, and really how those changes impacted your plans for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, when the pandemic hit and all the lockdowns started, the first thing we really had to do was shift more of our plans from in-store to digital and e-commerce, where we were seeing the growth. Additionally, like given the state that the country was in and shoppers, we really wanted to do something to help. So we quickly launched our United for America campaign and Unilever's annual day of service in May of last year, where we really partnered with our retailers to help frontline workers and those affected with COVID or by COVID through partnerships with NGOs like Feeding America, Direct Relief, Luminary, Boys and Girls Club. So that initiative launched kind of right after the pandemic, and that annual day of service is something that we're going to continue kind of to give back and do that annually. And then as we dug into kind of the shopper behavior, we found that as shoppers were kind of looking to limit where they went to buy their needs and limit the physical stores that they went into, we found that the grocery channel was acquiring a lot of new shoppers that we started to call their new friends. And these new friends were buying categories in grocery that they typically hadn't bought on their food trips before, like beauty and personal care. So as we look to say, how can we keep these shoppers engaged and how can we keep them buying Unilever products in grocery, we developed a grocery channel loyalty program with our partners at Fetch Rewards. And really by leveraging the scale of Unilever's products that span from food to ice cream to beauty and personal care products, we were able to offer shoppers a $10 gift card for every $30 of qualifying purchases that they made and uploaded their receipts to Fetch Rewards at our participating grocery stores. And in the back half of last year, we gave shoppers the opportunity to earn $50 in gift cards. And not only were we able to kind of target the shoppers that were already on the Fetch Rewards app, but we were able to partner with retailers, both small and large, to really drive increased baskets, more trips, and market share for both Unilever and our grocery retailers.
That's awesome. I mean, I think being flexible with the way you're planning is so huge now. That you mentioned, so using Fetch Rewards. I know Unilever is a huge company. What kinds of things are you doing to bring people into the Unilever family at grocery, and does that change across different retailers?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So one of the things is partnering with our partners like Fetch that where we can target what people are buying and kind of bring them into Unilever and drive new users. The other thing is really partnering with our retailers themselves. So during the pandemic, a lot of retailers, and even leading up to it, a lot of retailers have been able to really truly figure out how to harness their 1P data and develop retail media networks and solutions for us to tap into. So we've been partnering with our retailers across the board to really identify where can we drive those incremental purchases and where can we target new shoppers who may be new to the category or new to Unilever and get them to buy more at our retail partners. In addition, really truly leveraging our 1P data to help drive growth for our retail partners as well.
Yeah, and I think especially that you bring up a good point, right? A lot of different retailers are probably at different stages of creating their own retail networks. So I think the Unilever first party data is definitely a huge piece of that. Messaging, right? So creative and I guess the way people are shopping both in store or for in store. How have you adjusted that through the pandemic to either shift your core focus or maybe even shed light on new products?
Yeah. So one of the things we found quickly is shoppers weren't looking for the latest hairstyles and the messaging the beauty messaging that we had leaned on before. So we really wanted to, first of all, make sure that we were giving them relevant solutions that made sense with how they were living their lives. We also wanted to make sure that we were very sensitive to the state that the shopper was in and the difficulties that our shoppers were experiencing during this time. So some of the key kind of themes and trends that emerged that we kind of shifted our focus to were that one-stop shopping, as we knew that shoppers were looking to get in and out of stores quickly. How could we make it easy for them? Value, we knew that there were a lot of cash-strapped shoppers that were looking to save money. So how could we deliver on that value proposition for them? Hygiene was extremely important as we had the fears of COVID and hand washing. We had a lot of messages out there that if you can't get hand sanitizer or soap, body wash works really well as well. So making sure that we were delivering the solutions that shoppers were looking for. Also, because salons were closed, people weren't able to get their regular treatment. So we offered a lot of at-home solutions and messaging with some of our beauty products. And then on the food side, it's at home meal inspiration. People were cooking at home. There was a lot of recipe fatigue and looking for new ideas on how to conveniently kind of shake up the dinner routine. So, how do you give them that at home meal occasion and meal inspiration? And then ice cream. Everybody wanted ice cream during the pandemic. So,
I want ice cream, even, yeah, pandemic or not.
yep. So, I
Um,
think as we move forward, really truly understanding the shoppers and staying close to what I think it's going to be really important to stay close to what are those shoppers needs and how are these going to evolve as they start to go out again. Are they like, now it's like, are you going to start styling your hair again? Let's start to, how can we save you money or time so you can go out and really enjoy now that things are opening up again?
That's a really good kind of a segue. Are you focusing, or I guess, does that same approach stay constant for your e-com shopping versus in-store shopping as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think ecom is definitely, you've got the convenience, and we want to make sure. I think with ecom, the biggest thing is making sure we help our retailers have the right content to help shoppers really truly navigate that experience and make the right decisions. And then how do we, on our end, kind of make sure that we're cutting through the clutter and we're driving the traffic to the ecom sites to helping to grow that. I think one of the things that the pandemic did is really truly grow click and collect and grow the adoption of these things that we've already been over investing kind of for ecom growth, and but the pandemic only made that accelerate even
Oh
further.
yeah.
So one of the things we've been doing is helping our retailers by investing in free delivery programs and things like that that are really going to keep people engaged, and then also making sure that our retailers have the right content for ecom.
Yeah, I know Unilever, that you guys rolled out your own online store for cleaning brands. I saw, which is super cool. We actually saw, so I don't know if you're familiar, but we have our own, we call it a COVID tracker, which was foot traffic. We were constantly monitoring, and it was cool. We saw obviously a dip in grocery store visitation, but not as much as obviously other retailers out there. So I know grocers are definitely curious or excited to get people back in. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was increasing basket growth. Is that still going to be a focus with Unilever kind of moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have that portfolio that spans the entire store essentially. So we have the ability, we through our Fetch partnership and other scale initiatives and offers that we do with our retailers, we offer like the spend 15, earn
Right.
5, and the opportunity to really build up those baskets at retailers. And I think that absolutely will continue because not only does it help our shoppers save money, but it also helps to grow those baskets and help keep shoppers engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the things that we kind of talked about, and this kind of touches with a few of the talking points that we just went over, but it used to be where, in the CPG industry, hyper targeted was almost a bad word, right? You want to just get in front of as many people as possible. Do you think that's still kind of holding true, or is it more about a number of touch points, but more quality as well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a balance. I think you're going to have your broad reach vehicles. Like we still do several FSIs to get out there and just deliver offers and communication to a broad reach. I think you'll have your tentpole merchandising events that you're going to want to get out there and get a broad reach. But then there's opportunities where it does make sense to be hyper targeted, and you've got it. So it all depends on your job to be done. And then ultimately, looking at the cost to be targeted versus the cost to be broad reach.
That's a good point.
And I think analyzing the incrementality of each. So if you're looking at it on a cost per incremental, knowing that you want to get new users, is it going to be more effective and efficient for you to go broad reach? Or does it make more sense for you to really truly be surgical about who you're talking to, and reach those shoppers with high targeted vehicles?
And to your point, it sounds like in more cases than not, the answer's somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Where we kind of you want to do everything.
I think there's both. I think we definitely value and want to create those relationships with our shoppers. And I think that's where the targeting and the personalization is going to be key. So while you can't walk away from the broad reach, we really truly want to leverage that data and targeting so that we are giving relevant, meaningful messages and offers to our shoppers to keep them coming back and engaged, and we can develop a relationship with them.
So that's a really good, again, a good segue here. So as as you're trying to figure that out, what can we as media partners or technology vendors help you with there, other than traditional media execution? How can we be more thoughtful for you?
Yeah, so I think in our world, we want to know our shoppers inside and out, and we pride ourselves on having a lot of data and having really good knowledge of that in working with our retailers. And I think anything that a vendor can do or partner could do to help us learn even more about our shopper and help us reach them and deliver those personalized solutions in ways that we can do with our own data, or our retailers partnership, is super valuable.
Yeah, I mean, data-driven marketing. We talked about this last week. It's here. It's here to stay, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and moving forward. So, I know you work across all of grocery, which I'm sure presents more challenges than not. Since each grocery is ultimately different, there are different markets, et cetera. How are you thinking about their media strategies and their go-to-market strategies? Do they all kind of have similar problems, or are you planning them separately?
Yeah, we do plan separately. We try to develop a channel strategy that's overarching, and where do we go from a channel? Um, but each of the retailers is very different in who their shopper segment is, as well as the tools that they have available. So some retailers, we may lean very heavily into the tools that they have available, whereas others may not be as developed in having their own tools available. So we may lean on leveraging a lot more of the customized national with a specific retailer lens. So it is a little bit of both. We have to kind of look at what the brand teams are doing, what the channel strategy is, and then really truly align to where the retailer shoppers are to deliver those custom plans.
Yeah, and are you even doing that from a market to market level, or is that more focused kind of on a national perspective?
I think it's on a retailer level. So a lot of our retailers in grocery, there are national retailers, and I think we'll have segments and shopper segments. So I think it's more based on the shopper segment than the region per se. So first we kind of start on, here's the national brand plan. And then, okay, let's look at these retailer shoppers and what are their shopper dynamics, and let's develop that program to reach the target shoppers at these retailers.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so I know obviously we need to be flexible with the way we're planning our media. How far in advance are you planning now versus how reactive or even proactive are you being?
That is the key question. I think it has to be somewhere in the middle. So we deal with a lot of long lead retailers. And so we will have to set our calendar and align on a merchandising plan far in advance. And I think what COVID taught us is we need to make sure that we're as nimble as possible with the messaging and the communication. So I think we need to work on developing these marketing packages and events for our retailers and secure that, but be as nimble as possible as we with the messaging and being able to quickly adapt and shift should circumstances with the shoppers or current events change, that we need to be a little bit more flexible with that. I think ideally in a media world, we want to get as close to near real time as we can with optimization. We're not always there. But I think what COVID reinforced is just that need to be very nimble with messaging.
Yeah, I think, to your point, I think we're kind of moving away from the traditional upfront is where everything happens kind of plan. So, a couple of the things that we experienced that I'm sure you had to replan for were, in-stock issues, panic buying, people going and really just, grabbing I remember the whole toilet paper thing was
Yeah.
equal parts funny and also kind of concerning. Yeah, so if you take us, I mean, I think that kind of led to the growth in click and collect. So can you take us through kind of how Unilever adapted your marketing strategies as click and collect really grew?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I mentioned earlier is once the pandemic hit and we didn't know what was happening with supply of stock ups. So we did pull back on a lot of our in-store. And we put a tiny pause on kind of some of our couponing efforts so until we could see. But then quickly realized that click and collect and e-commerce, so we needed to put even more into that so that we could help the shoppers navigate this space and really make sure that we were engaging and driving share on the Unilever side. So we moved kind of some of those in-store dollars and really invested more into that e-com space. And then, as I mentioned, that free delivery and click and collect, that was a huge area for us to help our retailers with. In addition, search is an area that we invested in for growth, as well as just making sure that the content was there, that the keywords for search is there, and that our retailers had the right e-com assets as more people started visiting retailer.com to make their purchases.
Sure. Are you finding at all that as the world starts to return to normal a little bit, are retailers requiring different things from their media than they were at this time last year, or is it all kind of just you have in your mind what you kind of want to do and let's just kind of go with that?
Yeah, I think it's accelerated the retailers need to have the media solutions there.
Sure.
And they are asking manufacturers to invest for growth with them, which from our side, being able to really truly leverage a retailer's 1P data is really beneficial. But yeah, we are seeing a lot of retailers make the ask that we do invest for growth in their e-com channels and their media networks.
One thing we didn't talk about that I hope is not going to catch you off guard, but obviously with the pandemic hitting, in-store marketing was kind of took a big hit. Do you see that coming back, and if so, how fast?
Yeah, I feel like, and this is my own personal opinion, I think people miss the experience of shopping in stores. So I think in the short term, as things start to open up, I do think we're going to start to see people going in store more. And I think it's going to be more of a experiential trip than a necessity trip. So I do think we'll see, at least for the short term, that in-store experience and the in-store trips increase. I don't know. What'll be interesting to see is what that balance is, and to really truly understand the insights as to, now that people have been used to shopping online all the time, when are they going to choose to go in online, and when are they going to choose to actually have that physical trip?
Yeah.
And I think understanding the insights on what's driving each of those will help us as marketers really truly understand how to deliver what the shopper's looking for in that experience.
Yeah, and I think to add to that as well, it probably depends a lot on the retailer as well, right? So a Costco, club membership might change the reason somebody needs to visit versus just a regular grocer.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so I know that, kind of riffing off of that, browse a bit, the ability to browse for a user. Obviously, you're not going in store, you can't really see the entire shelf, and if you're shopping online, either on a one screen or two screens or however it's going to be, browsing got a little bit more difficult to do. So clearly, you were all flexible in that you could create the Fetch Rewards program you mentioned earlier, a lot more scale events, those types of things. Is new product innovation something you all are focusing on as much as you were previously, or is it just mainly getting people to buy more of what they are comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking to innovate, so I definitely think it's still a focus, and ensuring that we're delivering the right innovation to meet the needs and the demand of the shopper is 100% something that we're looking at. That's not my area per se, but I do know
Sure.
that innovation it's always going to be something that is a focus. From my end, it's how do you break through the clutter, and how do you really truly drive awareness of that innovation when it's out there, when you're not, I think, in the e-com environment, how do you drive awareness when you don't have the full end caps that you have when people are browsing and those impulse purchases? So digitally, how do you create that experience where you're breaking through and driving awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You need to make people aware of it, and then of course get it in their baskets. So data-driven marketing is obviously something you're focused on, the industry is focused on. I think, and you mentioned this, we need to be doing a better job about informing you all about who your consumers are. Are there any gaps in kind of the resources that you have now, with between your first party data and some of the retailer data that we can really try and hone in on and figure out a solution for?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's gaps. We're actually really ramping up that space on the Unilever side. We recently announced a new shopper marketing partnership with ARC, and we're building a really strong data-driven platform with them, leveraging our data. So I feel like from a data perspective, I think we've got a lot. I think it's and then we just need to figure out where that matches up with our retailers data, and
Yeah.
how we can truly bring those solutions. um, and then how do we, I think the biggest thing from a vendor perspective is, how do we deliver unique solutions to truly engage with the shoppers in new and different ways?
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I guess, I have a couple more questions, and then I want to get to, I see we have a couple of questions from the audience, so I want to make sure we get to those as well. One thing, as we're looking forward into 21 and beyond that, given all the shifts and changes that happened, what are you kind of predicting for the industry? And anything you're excited about or pessimistic about?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball because it's been a wild ride this last year, and I don't think anybody would have predicted where we are now. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happened. I definitely think e-com and digital and the need to be there with the shopper and that data-driven marketing is going to be the wave of the future. But as we just talked about, I don't think we can forget in-store. I think we need to truly understand what that in-store experience will look like, and how do we meet the needs of the shopper in that space. I think purpose-driven marketing is going to be extremely important. I think shoppers are going to remember the brands that were with them during the pandemic, and purpose, it kind of brought everybody, the pandemic kind of brought the world together, and purpose is important, and it's important to give back and do good for the community. And I think the shoppers are looking to have that purpose woven through in brands communication, and those are the brands that are going to do well.
Yeah, I completely agree, and especially with the need to kind of have an omni-channel approach, right? So generating, I guess, purpose-driven marketing, not just on a mobile phone, but then how do you tell that complete story throughout all their different mediums?
Exactly.
Are there any, well, I guess with that in mind, then, how are you evaluating campaigns or programs that you put in, you put into market that you want to really solve for that problem?
Yeah, the evaluation really changes because they all have different jobs to be done. And I think one of the things that we need to try to make sure that we're not just solely evaluating every single program that we do on return on investment. And I think that obviously that's very important. But really, truly understanding what are we trying to do? Are we trying to get new shoppers to buy our product? Are we trying to drive category growth? So it's a tough question because I think each of our programs needs to be evaluated in a very different way based on what the objective is. And I think from our standpoint and the marketer's standpoint is we really truly need to identify what that job to be done is in order to really truly develop the ways of measuring it.
That's a really good answer, I think, and also something that now that you've mentioned it, I think us as vendors or as partners need to be doing a better job on our end as well with from the jump, level setting with, okay, what's the goal here, and how can we better build a program to actually solve for that, even if it's not primarily or like secondarily focused on anything other than ROI, right? It's a delicate dance, if you will.
Yeah, it is. I think we've been so trained as an industry to look at ROI. And I think ROI is definitely important, and it's definitely something that we look at with everything. But we need to really truly understand what we're trying to do, and did we achieve that objective first and foremost?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, last question, or I guess a two-part question before we get into the audience. Can you, to you, or at least for your, for what you were doing with Unilever in the last 12, 18, 16 months, what were the biggest challenges that you can kind of think of?
I think the biggest challenge for us was the unknown. And this was a really, really strong test of our ability to really, truly be agile and nimble. And I'm pretty proud of what we were able to come up with on a short turnaround time and how we were able to adapt. But it was really, truly a time that we didn't know what the environment was going to be in the next month. So really trying to develop programs and think ahead was a true test to how agile we really could be. And I think there were some things that we did really well, and there were some learning things that we got out of that as we start to plan for the future. But overall, I think that was the biggest challenge of it all.
Yeah, and I will personally say credit goes to the brand managers and the media planners who were planning and replanning all of last year. I'm sure they had a lot of extra hours and probably a couple more than a few extra drinks. So all right, cool. Well, I wanted to save some time here, so let's take a look at some of the questions from the audience. First one. You've had to adapt and alter consumer media and digital habits in many ways this past year, especially. What are you seeing when it comes to those types of behavioral changes, and how are you adapting?
I think it's part of the fast adoption of the click and collect and Instacart and all of those. I think that goes back to where we talked before. It's really truly making sure that we are developing those comprehensive plans to drive that growth and make sure Unilever has a share of voice on those vehicles. And then I think it's going to be truly understanding like what that shopper behavior is when we figure out what the new norm is, like how much of that is going to stay. Obviously, this is an area that we are going to continue to lean into for growth. But then determining how much we focus on kind of the in-store piece and
Yeah.
traditional shopper marketing tools is going to be honestly something that we're going to have to figure out as we see what that new norm becomes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, as we touched on, I think it's up to everybody to be a little bit more flexible and understand that you used the word nimble, which I think is perfect. Being nimble is going to be huge. Another cool question here. So do you have any examples of where you have been able to listen to your consumers, either through solicited feedback or based on shopping patterns, and change your product or marketing strategies? And if no, or if yes, when should you not listen to them?
I think we do a lot of consumer listening, and our insights team kind of throughout COVID would be giving us a lot of information. Like we had daily, weekly reads on this is what the consumer's saying, this is what the consumer's shopping. And I think we immediately altered a lot of our messaging and our creative. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier with the beauty and personal, like we really
Right.
dialed back on that and focused a lot more on the value and convenience and hygiene
Hygiene. Yeah.
messages, like, and we'll continue to evolve that, and we're starting to kind of lean back in a little bit more into that space. But a lot of that came directly from what we were hearing from our shoppers and what we knew that the needs of them that they were looking for.
So do you see or predict at least anything kind of gearing back towards the more, single product type of creative or anything like that as shoppers go in store?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the single type of creative, the single focused creative, that I mean, that's still
Right.
stayed. I mean, we still have brands that we're going to do their solo creative. Um, and I think we're going to have to think through what the in-store experience is going to probably be a very different message than what the omni message is, depending on how they shop and what we're finding out is the motivations for doing both. I think we're going to continue to listen. We've started to do a little bit more of like, hey, you're going out, like get ready to like go out and live your life again.
Right.
That kind of messaging will start to be more infused, and we'll continue to do the listening to find out kind of where we go next.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so here's a question that I think you answered some of it. So I'll read the question, then I'll kind of change it. How have shifts in consumer behavior over the past year forced modifications to your business goals, and how do you measure success? So we kind of talked about that, but one thing that I don't want to understate is, the difference in brands that you work on.
Yeah.
From ice cream to, personal hygiene products. How do you kind of modify based on the actual brand that you're working on?
Yeah, so that'll be based on kind of what the individual insights were. So we found out, so ice cream, we were honestly like, you don't have to do a lot. You didn't have to do a lot of marketing for ice cream last
Right.
year because everybody was eating a lot of ice cream. So we adapted kind of based on that. Where are we going to drive that? Foods again was a very different insight than what we saw with personal care. It was less of that one-stop shop and more about how can we give you the convenient meal solutions, because we had a couple different kinds of shoppers. We had those that were looking for convenience, and we had those that were like, hey, let's start experimenting. I've got all this time. I'm going to start baking. I'm going to start doing all these things. So
Yeah.
how can you cater to the needs of those shoppers? So it's really truly understanding. It all starts with the shopper. And if you understand your shopper, then you can understand how to market to them better.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any times, and this is just me being curious, were there any times that, from within the same category of brands that some things worked for one brand and not for another?
Yeah. I think that our shoppers are, I mean, we have a wide range. I mean, when you look in personal care, we've got Suave, Dove, Nexus, Tresemme.
Resume.
So they all have different value propositions
Yeah.
and different shopper bases. So it's kind of really truly looking at who are the shoppers that are Dove shoppers, Suave shoppers, and developing kind of those specific value propositions and messages for each of those shoppers to get them to convert or buy more.
Yeah, no, and that's again goes back to kind of what the theme of this whole chat has been, right? We're using we want to get further down the funnel to understand who this exact
Yep.
shopper is, and then reach them and tell a story that they can buy into
Yep.
and grow their basket.
Yeah, and our brand teams from a national perspective kind of develop what is the brand's overall value proposition. So that'll happen in terms of all the upper funnel. So my job with lower funnel marketing is really truly like lean on what the brands have done and take that national brand message and how do I bring it down to convert shoppers at the retail level. So a lot of that really truly leveraging the brand insights really didn't sit with me. My job was more of a, what is my call to action going to be at the retail level to get them to buy Dove over a competition, or how do I get them to buy more of Unilever brands at a particular retailer?
Right. Yeah. And obviously those are the two main drivers of revenue, right? Getting
Yep.
somebody who's not already a shopper, turning them into a shopper, or if somebody is a shopper, getting them buying more things.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess, as we kind of start wrapping things up, is your focus this year, are you trying to get more people into grocery? Are you being tasked with that? Or are you just trying to focus on whether or not they're buying through click and collect or doing something or in store? It doesn't matter so much to you. You just want to get them buying at grocery one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I think it's a combination of both. We definitely want to continue to accelerate e-com growth. So you will see us working with our retailers a lot to really drive that. I mean, that's been something that Unilever is definitely focused on, accelerating e-com growth globally. So we will be focused there, but again, overall, we want to help drive our overall retail sales.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that probably also changes based on how far along the retailer is with their data capabilities and or online shopping capabilities.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to that a little bit, a lot of the brands had to kind of adjust and adapt quickly to address some of these issues in 2020. Did you find that retailers were more willing to be nimble with you, or certain grocers were more willing to be nimble on some things versus others, or was everybody just saying let's get people buying again?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a learning experience for everyone, and I think everyone was as nimble as they could, and everybody understood we were in just a very, very unique time frame. And I think our retail partners were really great and understanding, and we really worked together to build these programs and bring them to life.
Awesome. Hey, Izzy, I think are we out of time?
You are, yes. I don't know if you have any last minute thoughts you want to share.
No, I think Jayme, that was fantastic. I'm so thankful for you and Izzy as well for hosting us, and Jayme, this was, I think, great content, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much, and for closing out our day on the consumer comeback. It's been a really incredible afternoon full of some insightful programming and content from both our speakers and moderators. And a special thank you to GroundTruth for being today's presenting partner. We hope you will all join us tomorrow for our Future of Esports and Gaming Summit, starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from EA, Anheuser-Busch InBev, Ford, MasterCard, Chipotle, and many more exceptional brands. So thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.